Hi everyone, it is April or almost April, and today I'm going to be giving you my TBR for the month. And this month I am finally participating in the Buzzwordathon, which happens every month now. I give you a buzzword. This month's buzzword is actually a buzz category, and that is space. All things that have to do with space related words. Most of my TBR is actually catered just to that because how much I love space. So let's get to it. I have the book sorted from like most spacey to least spacey, but with spacey words in the title. That'll become more apparent as I get through them, but I have it in that order just so we can start with the most relevant to Buzzwordathon, in my opinion. The first one I have is one of the oldest books on my TBR. I've owned it for probably 6 years now, and that is The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene. And this is about superstrings, hidden dimensions, and the quest for ultimate theory. And it's about superstring, basically. Now this is old, like a decade old nearly. So I'm not sure how to date it is, but I think it'll be at least a good introduction. Like, I've heard a little bit about superstring, I've never actually dug deep into it. I know the basic idea is like everything is made up of strings. Like we think of atoms, electrons, protons. Like those little things are made up of smaller things, and the smallest thing you can get to are these strings apparently. But that's the idea. Nonfiction, space, oldest on my TBR, so it actually satisfies a lot of good categories. The thing I haven't mentioned, but it's like a new goal of mine moving forward, is that I want to make a point to read at least one science book a month, which I generally do that a lot, but after reading a couple really good science books last month, I just like I want more of that in my life. I want to be able to talk about it more. I get the least amount of views on my page, but I do love talking about science, so I'm gonna do it anyways. Next up is another one that honestly is the lowest priority. I only bought this when I was still buying from Book Outlet, and it was cheap, and I have a mild interest in Pluto. Moon Phrase set. I do some research on Pluto as a planetary scientist. I like Pluto a lot, but I only have a little bit of interest in hearing this story because, I don't know, I guess I'm more interested in the science and the narrative of how it got done, but I'm still mildly curious. Maybe this book will surprise me and teach me there was a lot more to this process that I appreciate. But I'm entering this with a bit of trepidation. But it's called it's Chasing New Horizons, but it's Inside the Epic First Mission to Pluto by Alan Stern and David Grinspoon. Grinspoon? Doesn't matter. Alan Stern is one of the lead scientists on the New Horizons mission, which went to Pluto arrived at Pluto in 2015, and it since made it to the Kuiper Belt. We got a lot of gorgeous pictures. Pluto is my favorite planet, honestly, even if it is a dwarf planet. And I feel like I didn't say it very clearly, but that book's about the mission to Pluto. Actually, that's all I know about it. So I don't know how much the context it is about like their personal story versus trying to get it done, get implemented, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I've read other books that have to do with like missions, and they're not always the easiest to read. Scientists can be great, but not always the best communicators, so it can be hit and miss sometimes. Next is another nonfiction science book. Who would have thought? A lot of that. I didn't realize that it had this many. The Planets by David Sobel. This is, I mean, the title says it all, really. That's all I really know about it. I'm pretty sure it's just like a recap of the history of the planets. David Sobel is a science journalist. She usually writes books about science history. I have one here. The Glass Universe is one that I read from her. This is actually one of my newer books that I've got from her. I have a whole collection pretty much now, but I have other ones I want to read. But this was one of the few of hers that have like a spacey name on it. This time it's going to be Planets. But she has other books that you can always check her out. She's great for science history if that's what you're interested in. And I'm excited to get into this as someone who is literally an expert in planetary science, in planets. So I'm curious what it has to teach me. And even if it's not teaching me anything new, sometimes it's just fun to experience the same thing in a new way. And next up, we're taking a hard turn into fiction. That is going to be Alien Sex. Aliens has to do with space. That's how it fits into this. And this is an anthology of stories. Science fiction and dark fantasy, edited by Ellen Datlow. Ellen Datlow is known for doing horror anthologies, and I've talked about her before on my channel, and this is one of the many ones that I ended up buying. And I'm not sure how hard the horror is, if this is horror at all, but I mean the title is hard not to love. It's hard not to be really intrigued, but also kind of creeped out, wondering how dark it's going to go in the Alien Sex side. But now I have getting into a few classics. I have this beautiful edition of 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't know if you can read it very well. It's actually very confusing. Is that backwards to you or is this to me? 2001: Space Odyssey. It's a gorgeous cover. It's a part of a series of classics that I have. I think I have a couple of books by the same edition. I don't know what it's a Penguin Galaxy classic. Not edited, but the cover is done by Alex Trocott. Just to give some credit to the creator of this edition. I really like it. Tales of One Space Odyssey, if you know what it is, you do. If you don't, I'm not sure if you care, but I've seen the movie several times. It's just the first time I'm reading the book. It's about a far future. What exactly is it about? It's a far future, weird science fiction thing. I don't know if the central conflict is meant to be known. But like we all know about the AI and the... I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. Okay, clearly I'm not a big enough fan to talk about this, but nevertheless, I'm getting into it. And hopefully I'll watch the movie if I have a chance. Now, another classic is going to be by Ursula K. Le Guin. That is the Lathe of Heaven, or the Lathe of Heaven. I'm not quite sure which one. And this is a science fiction book. I want to say it's time travel, which I don't remember. I feel like I was hesitant to pick up more Ursula K. Le Guin because I have other books by her that I've felt sort of hit and miss about. But because it's time travel, I think that was one reason why we picked it up. And I don't know if it's clear here, but heaven is often referred to as space, as, you know, up in space, astronomy. So I'm going to be using this term heaven very often. Like it probably is the biggest stretch of the words that I pull from that sound spacey. But that's what I'm pulling from here. Next is a short story collection by Ray Bradbury. That is The Martian Chronicles, which I believe is about a Martian colony being told from the perspective of different people. There may be more conflict than I realize. I'm not quite sure, but I have a lot of classics. I just realized that. That's good. I need more classics. I've learned that if you want to read more classics, you should try and pick up classics that are in genres that you prefer, and I think it'll help make it a lot easier to pick those up. And so obviously 3 science fiction classics makes it easier for me to sort of get my classic quota met. And a lot of these classics honestly are narrated by one of my favorites, which is damn it, doesn't matter. It does matter. Now I care. I care so much right now. Narrated by Scott Prick. That's it. Scott Prick. He does a bunch of stuff, and I love his voice. It's very, very good at what he does. One of my favorites. Another one that is narrated by a favorite of mine. Not quite as high as Scott Prick, but this is book 2 of the Broken Earth trilogy. Earth being a word in space. I knew that's a stretch. I don't know, but I'm including it. And this is the Obelisk Gate. I meant to read this back in February. I did not get that done, but luckily I'm getting to her second book from her other series that I wanted to read this month. It's like still March one if you don't tell me this, but I want to read this, fitting it in because I need to get to it. Whether it's a priority. Obviously I don't need to do any of this, but when I say I need to, like I need to satisfy my need for it. It's ridiculous, I know. Now we're getting more and more into not actually space, because I'm not sure that's quite space. It is sci-fi, fantasy, but not space. This is Fantasy Magical Realism by Anna Marie McLemore, When the Moon Was Ours. And I know Anna Marie McLemore is fairly popular. They are known for writing a lot of magical realism type fantasy retellings. And I'm not quite sure this is supposed to be. If I had to take a guess based off the stars and based off like the person kind of floating, it makes me think Peter Pan, but I feel like I would have heard that if that was what this was. So either way, I'm intrigued. I've heard great things about this. Honestly, this is one of those books that, one of those authors I picked up because of Books on Lala when I was hesitant to pick up YA. And as it turns out, they are one of the YA authors who are one of my favorites now because of one book, honestly. I only read one book by them. It was up here somewhere, but Blanca Roja, and I'm excited to check out their next book. And in case it's not clear, moon is the space word. Oh, in the Martian Chronicles, obviously the word Martian is a space word, and then Tales of One Space Odyssey, space is a space word, quite literally. And then A Song Flung Up to Heaven. This is the next nonfiction memoir by Maya Angelou, and this is number, was it 5, I think, maybe number 6. And I'm excited for this one because it's one of the few that is fully on audio, narrated by herself. And so I'm excited, really excited to get to this for that reason. Not just because I get to hear her voice again, but because if it's on audio, it tends to make me think that it's probably popular, which implies that if we can assume that popularity is a good measure of quality, that maybe it'll be one of the better versions. I like all of her memoirs, some are better than others, so I'm excited and have high expectations for this one. I know it's kind of hand-wavy in my logic, but you know what? It's my logic and do what the fuck I want with it. Okay, Moon of the Crusted Snow by, I probably should look this up, Rebecca Rice, or W. Rice, and this is a dystopian, almost horror, I'm not quite sure if it was classified horror, but sci-fi dystopian world, written by an indigenous author. I'm excited because this is probably the closest thing to horror I have on my TBR this month, so it's gonna be a high priority because I want to make sure I get to at least one horror every month. Now, a couple more left. We're getting to one that's not spacey at all. This is purely my anti-racist book of the month. I do not have an anti-racist book that had anything to do with space at all, and this is Woman, Class, and Race. Damn it, Woman, Race, and Class by Angela Y. Davis, rather. And this is, I think, self-explanatory when it's about it. It's a nonfiction book that explores different themes around women, race, and class. And Angela Davis is a very big, well-known person in the field of, and when it comes to anti-racism as well as socialism, or rather, anti-capitalism, or at least anti-capitalism to an extent. Maybe I'm mischaracterizing her. I'm not quite sure. And I wanted to read this in January, and I could not find the time. And I'm really hoping to find the time this month. I am very close to the end of my TBR, and that is because I have substantially reduced the amount of books I'm letting myself put on a TBR. The last 2 months, I have undercut my goals significantly, like by 2,000 pages worth, which to give you some context it's like 40%. Jesus, that means I'm getting nearly half, like 60%. I'm achieving 60% of my goal, which is fine. I'm reading plenty. I know that. Don't get me wrong. It's me setting myself up to fail that is the problem. Both the process of stressing about it and then being angry at myself when it's over. But it really messes up my logistics too. I love setting up these TBRs. I do it like months in advance. I mean, not like hardcore, it's pretty hardcore, but I don't set it in stone until it's finally here, which means I need to stop setting myself up to fail. And if I read more than that, that is fantastic. And then maybe I'll shift it again if things start to change. But until then, I'm going to start severely changing my limit to what I let myself read. I actually have quite a few books here, but if you notice, a lot of them are very thin. So with that in mind, this is one I'm reading, and point is that I should have plenty of time to read this physically because it's not on audio, which was the main reason why I didn't have time in January. So I am making sure I have time to read all of these books, especially this one, because I do not want to mess it up again. I'm really, really excited. I think I put this on my 5-star prediction list because I've heard such amazing things, and the intersectionality of all the concepts going on in here sounds very fascinating, very thought-provoking, and I'm seriously excited for this. Also, this classic edition, the paper, this classic edition by Modern Penguin Classics, it just feels so good. I love the texture. Now, with that in mind, I do have one more book still left, and this one is for the Octavia Butler slow read. That is Survivor, the 4th book in the Pattern series by Octavia Butler. This is book 1 of the series in chronological order. They are not publishing it anymore, so I have an ebook version that we are reading for the slow read. I will try and link to it below if I remember. But we read one book by Octavia Butler, generally speaking, in the order of publication, once every 2 months over the course of 2 years. We're now well into it, and we're nearly done with the series, and we're going to be reading this one that's not on audio or been published, which means I'll have to read it with my eyes. But I'm not going to be stressing too much about this one. It'll be probably my lowest priority in the sense that I want to start it, make progress, but I know how I am about picking up books physically, and I also have all month next month to read it as well. Next month is also, like I said, I plan ahead. Next month is the Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and I want to try and prioritize my TBR for that as well. So with that in mind, these are most of the books I'll be reading. I mean, if I have extra time, I will of course try and fit in some arcs and maybe a couple of things that I'm not talking about. But generally speaking, this is all the books I am dedicating my life to reading next month. And I think it's a totally achievable and a decent amount of books. And honestly, a really exciting set. A lot of these are science fiction, science related. It's right up there in the kind of shit that I like, and I'm excited. I always love it when I focus so heavily on stuff like that. And this Buzzwordathon gave me a great reason to do that. I haven't decided if I'm going to do like a vlog for it, just because it's the entire month, and I don't know if I want to do that for the entire month. Anyways, I hope you were intrigued by any of these books. Let me know what you're reading this month, and since it is the Buzzwordathon spacey shit, why not give me a spacey symbol in the comments? That seems to be the only time I ever ask for an emoji is when I ask for a spacey one. So just anyways, give us a space emoji of some sort, a galaxy, a star, a moon, I don't care. Just make it happen. Somebody start demanding. Sorry, my point is, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and have a fantastic day. Bye, everyone.